We can't go step on camera again.
No, we can't. No.
Right, we're back at Nick's. You might have seen the video a couple of weeks ago of his Favor running after he destroyed it. What a bait! He rebuilt it, got it all going again. What did we think the problem was at that time?
Apart from this.
Oh yeah, this thing. So that was the result, but we thought it was the oil valve, didn't we?
Yeah. So there's quite a lot going on. So the oil pump is sat on the side of the engine. There you go. There you go. This guy sits on the side. Feed from the oil tank in.
Mm-hmm.
This then essentially is a drip feed into here into the crankcase.
Yeah.
Now, this was just originally a hollow tube, and unfortunately what we thought was happening was there's a fair amount of crankcase pressure as the piston goes up and down, and it was if you filled this with oil and kicked the bike over originally, it would just spurt everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I thought that the back pressure from that was not allowing this pump, which isn't very strong, to pump.
Yeah, it wasn't overcoming the crankcase pressure.
No. So we thought that was that. So made a valve. And inside here, there is a little sort of conical shaped depression inside the crankcase. And there's a little piece of 15 thou shim steel that sits at the bottom. And then when the piston comes down, generates a lot of pressure, that shim gets pushed against the bottom of the valve, shutting it. And then when the piston goes up, it creates a vacuum. Because the bottom of it's conical shaped, it allows the shim to fall, and then the oil gets sucked into the crankcase. Great. So I made this, filled this with oil, and when you kick it over, it just sucks the oil down. I thought,
Yeah.
problem solved. But
So then we put it back together, and then that was the short video of it running,
yeah,
and it
ran beautifully.
ran fine. The oil pump was pumping. It
Yeah.
looked like it was going into the crankcase.
Everything looked to be fine.
It looked like it was going into the crankcase.
But it wasn't.
Do you want to summarise what happened when you took it out for your first spin?
Yeah.
Different piston.
This happened. So it got hot, ran dry. I drained the sump. There should be a bit in the sump, not a lot.
After how long? Like 15 minutes, 20 minutes?
So, yeah, it's about that, 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
And yeah, it nipped up. I thought, not good. So I've had the pump apart.
Bearing in mind, I told him this was going to happen. Before he went on a ride, I told him to check that everything was working properly and we were getting oil out of the sump.
I've had this pump running before, and oil did come out of it.
Yeah.
At some point. And now what appears to happen is the pump's all apart in here. But essentially there's a worm drive in here and a thing. I wonder if I can get it out. This is how it works. It's two-stage. So this sits in here. The oil feed in, as this twists on this wormy.
Mm-hmm.
This twists, this little cutout throws oil up through a ball valve under here, through the drip feed and into the sight glass. The other side of the pump, this actually it's this way around, doesn't matter. This side then should take what's in the bath and force it out the tube.
And this is what some people picked up on, where they were saying, you do realise there's a valve where you need to adjust the drip feed. We've done all that.
Correct.
We've checked the drip feed. Drip feed was fine on the pump.
Yeah, so then this is the shaft. There's a knob that goes on this shaft, and this adjusts essentially a sort of a sprung-loaded flap here, which pushes this back and forward.
Yeah.
And then, if you imagine it sits in there, it pushes this back and forward, so more or less of this throws oil up and down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So less of the scooping action slows it down. So I'd set it to what seemed to be running fine, and you set it on the drip feed here. So how many drips per minute?
Yeah, and we had it set up perfectly fine. We tried from fucking no oil flow to maxing it out, and then set it to what was recommended. You checked it on the ride, and it was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And so it would appear everything was working.
Yeah. I put it all back together.
What have we figured out, Nick?
Yeah, the pump doesn't work. Two things actually. One, crucially, this pump doesn't work. Now, Tuck and I spent a good hour with this, with oil lines. We had it running on a drill. We primed everything, because maybe we thought it needs to be primed. If there's an airlock, it's not going to work. could not get oil out of it. It comes up and it drips through here, but it will not pump out of here. And doing a few measurements, realised that actually the fit at this end, which is this end here, is shit. So that fit in there is not good. And that then means that I think it's just not enough to be able to throw oil out.
Yeah.
Like the oil just drips past. So the oil pump doesn't work. But
what was the glaring thing, which really we should have noticed a long time ago?
So the pump is obviously directional. Here it is. And the thread on the worm drive will obviously only work one way. As this spins round, right, this oil also takes it from the timing case and lubes this shaft. So this is always lubed.
So that's
so this goes anti-clockwise.
It does. Interrupt, Colin.
You want me to get the prop out?
Right, so after a brief little break to hear about Rex's sexual encounters from the 50s?
Well, no, I think so, yeah.
Okay, anyway.
And true a crankshaft quickly.
Oh yeah, true a little crankshaft on some little bicyclette thing.
Yeah, something
Whatever
like that.
whatever it is.
Some horrible little engine.
Anyway, back to it. So,
where we were was this turns anti-clockwise. And
let's just reiterate, that turns anti-clockwise.
yeah, facing it. Now, if we kick this over, this rotates this way, which means the engine also rotates this way. And this rotates the opposite way because it's run off the timing gear. Now, as we can see, that is going anti-clockwise as we look at it. This needs to go anti-clockwise as we look at it. However, when they go together, this actually needs to turn the opposite way.
That needs to turn clockwise.
So, no matter what happens,
it was never going to work because
gonna work.
it's the wrong fucking oil pump for the bike.
It certainly is.
And we thought that to start with, and we thought that pump was not going to work, and you spent a year, less than a year, whatever, looking for a replacement pump, but one that span anti-clockwise.
Yeah, which they do exist, but they're very rare, very hard to find.
And all this time, you needed one that turns
clockwise, which I could have just purchased and put it on, and it probably would have been fine. So, guess what the solution is?
Buy a new oil pump.
Buy a new oil pump.
See you in a few weeks for another video.
It's going so well.
Good old favor.